If you're enjoying the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows. The Health Geeks would like to apologize to Dr. Jen Gunter for mispronouncing her name in our discussion of the Menopause Manifesto. Again, to the listeners, it is Dr. Jen Gunter.
This episode is sponsored by Well Balanced Nutrition and 360 Health.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hello, everybody. We're the Health Geeks, and we love reading books. And I'm telling you, the books that we read just open up all sorts of crazy thoughts. And last time we introduced the Menopause Manifesto by Jen Gunter, and she's talking about owning your health with facts and feminism. But, I'm always kind of want to say, okay, here's a book. I need to know about the structure and who said what and should I believe them. So tell us a little bit. Kristen Norton from Well Balanced Nutrition is here.
I'm here.
And I thought she could tell us a little bit about the author.
So Dr. Jen Gunter is an internationally best-selling author, OBGYN, with more than 3 decades of experience as a vulvar and vaginal disease expert. So her New York Times and USA Today best-selling book, The Vagina Bible, has been translated into 19 languages. She's got several awards. Her TED Talk reached 1 million views in its first month. She has a podcast that's produced by TED and some interesting videos. She's got a website called drjengunter.com. Mm-hmm. So she's out there doing things.
Yes, she's a public figure.
Yes.
An influencer and probably accessible on all social media. Mm-hmm. And I think those credentials are pretty substantial. She's got a great educational background and she has a practice background. So she's got experience plus education. And I think that informs people at a level that most of us don't have.
Right.
So reading her book, I remember not being really excited about this topic, although after we've gotten into it, I'm kind of excited about this topic. But didn't you make a comment, Eleanor? I'm sorry, I recommended this book. It's like reading a medical book.
I did. At some point, I was like, I'm so sorry that we're reading this right now, because there are certain parts in it that it feels like I'm reading a textbook.
So I'm not.
That was just hard.
Not sure how. If you're out there thinking you want to select a book, maybe look at one of our podcasts and how interested are you really in this topic? Because if you have some personal need, this book is a tremendous resource. And I think you might read it with a different eye than someone who is just, reading health literature. Right.
And you can kind of skip around a little bit and read what's important to you in here. And if you're a research learner, then you would really like this.
Well, let me address that just a little bit.
Okay.
Because, who published the book? I always like to see, what publishing house is publishing this stuff? Because I used to teach medical sciences, and I had a bookstore in the School of Medicine that had an interesting publishing house assortment. Which was very respected and very validated that we could use information out of those books with our students, because they go through a review process that's extremely critical with editors that have the kind of educational background that they need to say, hey, that's an accurate statement. It's good. Or can you refine that or clarify that or reference that? So that's kind of, I think maybe you out there wonder, why is she worried about who publishes these books? Well, that's why.
And they sound just like that.
Yeah.
Who in the hell's doing this
That's
research?
Right. Yeah, and we're that come down from the hills there. Tim knows what I'm talking about. All right.
Oh, yeah.
So this is Kensington Publishers, or Citadel Press out of Kensington Publishers out in New York, New York. Now, they call themselves an independent press, and they started in 1974. So they're not, that's a good 48-year run or longer.
Math is hard.
Yeah, for me. Paperbacks are their thing. It's a family-owned business. That's why I think they're independent, which gives them a little edge, in the market. But paperbacks, and this book is paperback. It wasn't available in hardback that I saw. They're primarily into historical romance and that kind of stuff.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, this is a varied press with a lot of authors. They also do a lot of cultural authors from different cultures promoting that body of literature. So it's a neat little publishing house. I'd say look into it if you're interested. I did. And then how did she organize her book? Well, she did it in 4 parts, which I thought was really good. She has her introduction where she describes her manifesto, and we've talked about that. We may continue to talk about it because it is a declaration of change. But the 4 parts are reclaiming the change. Now, she's calling the menopause the change.
Yeah.
Okay, understanding your body as an act of feminism, which, that's kind of a new angle on understanding your body. It's just not looking at charts and diagrams. It's looking at how did these charts and diagrams come along, and how did all the recommendations come along? Who was formulating those ideas, and what did they think was important? Mm-hmm. And they typically weren't women.
Right.
So that's why she brings in this act of feminism, which is a good lens to look at. Second part of the book is understanding the change, what to expect when you're expecting menopause. And I thought that was kind of cute because we expect babies.
Right.
And I don't think I've ever expected menopause. Maybe we should. Maybe that would be part of the preparation.
I think so.
And I think in one of our episodes, Kristen, you said, having a baby's not all roses.
Right.
And if you get pregnant thinking it's going to be a happy little trek, you get some surprises.
You sure do.
And it's better to kind of know what to expect during a pregnancy. And I think that's what she's saying here about expecting menopause. Here's what to expect. Here's some things that can happen, and you can do this. Women have done this for centuries. And then the third part of the book is therapy, for the change. If you are struggling beyond the typical or She discusses typical and normal, and we'll talk more about that. But if you're not able or you're really in a bad way, there are some therapies and ideas that you have to evaluate, whether they're hormones, diets, or supplements. And then the fourth part of the book is taking charge of the change. So how you can act, as an advocate for yourself. So each chapter has got a little succinct summary at the end, which we loved.
Yes, those were great.
We like them because they summarize what happened, and that might be a way to look at the book. Go read the summaries, and if there's stuff in there that say, "Oh, I wonder about that," then go back and read the chapter.
Yeah.
And then she's got some supplemental material with some really good charts on bleeding patterns, which I don't think I'm not an OBGYN. I'm not sure I would have thought about that. But there are a variety of bleeding patterns, and you might need to know about that to select the therapeutic product that might help you, either with the bleeding patterns or with the symptoms of menopause, the hot flashes, maybe the loss of focus, etc. Then on top of that, she's got an appendices and selected references and an index, which I love a book to have an index, because then if you want to say, what was she saying about hot flashes, or what was she saying about testosterone pellets, you can find it. So yes, kudos to her for structuring this book as a user-friendly, accessible knowledge bank. And I think that might be all I want to say about how it's organized. You want to throw in anything there?
No, it's a great review.
Yeah. So she says, I demand that the era of silence and shams yield to facts and feminism. Hello? Has anybody out there been silent about menopause?
Lots of us.
Yeah.
I think what you're looking for is
the crickets. So managing menopause is the ultimate exercise in whole body or holistic medicine.
Yeah, I think it's important to go over the common symptoms and medical conditions that she addresses in this book.
Yeah.
So abnormal bleeding, hot flushes and night sweats, sleep disturbance, temporary cognitive changes such as brain fog, vaginal dryness, pain with sex, decreased libido, joint pain, and then medical conditions that can sometimes be associated with heart disease, osteoporosis, dementia, Alzheimer's, depression, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, urinary tract infections.
Oh, God, that sounds like fun.
Yeah. So, but she addresses all of this in the book.
Yeah.
That's why sometimes it felt like reading a text
And
for
I think,
school.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the number 2 risks that she really, really highlights are the increased risk for cardiovascular disease, because that's the number 1 killer of women.
Right.
Sometimes we get distracted with breast cancer and some of these other things, but cardiovascular disease kills more of us.
You know what I thought was interesting is she mentioned that sometimes the pain of a heart attack is less intense than the pain of cramps.
Oh, yeah. We
So
present
we-
very differently.
So we don't necessarily think it's a big deal, and that's an issue. That was fascinating to read.
Yeah, women present very differently with cardiovascular events. And we do need to know that, because that listening to our body thing that we keep talking about, that's important. She wrote this book because she was promoting the Vagina Bible, and I'm thinking maybe we need to read that sometime. It's like you said in one of our episodes, it's hit the charts big time. But she said the reviewer or the interviewer that was promoting the book saw that Dr. Jen Gunter had an estrogen patch on, and she wanted to know about it. And then all she wanted to know was about menopause. And then Jen started paying attention to how many women had questions about these symptoms of menopause and should I get on estrogen or not? Because, that's another thing. When I said I wanted to talk about the scientific foundation of this book, she brings up some databases that are referenced in a lot of our reading. One is the Women's Health Initiative. And I think we need to maybe let our listeners, you aren't reading this, you're listening. The Women's Health Initiative started in 1991, and I remember when it kicked off because I was in the medical education world at the time. And it's a National Institute of Health supported research study for a long-term natural study focusing on strategies of preventing heart disease, breast and colorectal cancer, osteoporosis in postmenopausal women. And there were 3 arms to it: a clinical trial, an observational trial, and a community prevention study. So this had 161,000 women in 40 clinical centers. So this is huge numbers that when we get data out of this, which they collected in 2005, and they pulled the plug on some of these studies because they were finding that the things they were using were killing women. So they did stop it, some of the clinical trials. All right, so that's one thing that's referenced a lot. Another one is the SWAN, which is another National Institute of Health study of women across the nation. So it's a United States initiative, and they're looking at biological specimen bank. They're taking tissue samples or blood samples to describe the chronology of the biological and psychosocial characteristics that occur during midlife. That's brain, heart health, impact of menopause on health and aging. And they're looking at racial, ethnic differences as well. So they've kind of broadened the perspective in that SWAN study. And then there's an international nurses study that I didn't get any information on, and she didn't reference that too much. But the thing that Jen did, she had no footnotes in this book, and that bothered me because she would say things like, I don't know, statistical data. And anytime anybody uses that, I want to know where they got it. And so I Googled, and I found where she found it. And it was NIH, and she should have let us know that. But when I read it and didn't know, I thought, she's making that up. She's just grabbing a number out of the air. Her references at the book are by chapter, not by a specific reference. So I would have liked that a little better, but I'm not going to ding her too hard on that. And then she is a member of the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and there's a Society of Obstetrics and Gynecology in Canada because she is a resident of Canada. She lives up there. And their mission in Canada is to lead the advancement of women's health through excellence and collaborative practice. In the United States, their mission is premier professional membership organization founded to support members, not to improve the lives of all people seeking obstetric and gynecological care, their families, and communities. I kind of like the way the Canadians said it. So anyway, those are the professional societies that influence the comments that she makes in this book. So this is a substantial manifesto, well supported.
That's good. Part of it, the fact that she's an OBGYN, means she's well-versed in medications.
Yep.
And dare I say less versed in lifestyle
And she admits
medicine.
that. She admits that docs are not educated in that. But I felt like she was heavy on hormone replacement therapy.
Yes, she does a lot of explaining and talking about that in chapters by themselves, and then like how they may or may not help certain symptoms.
Then so much conversation about the estradiol and the estrogens and the progesterones and progesterons and all the little different species of these hormones.
My guys just glazed over that, and I was like, can I skip to the summary?
Yeah, but I mean that's her interest is to prescribing.
Right.
I mean, because she comes from prescribing. And then she will say something like, and it's evidence that lifestyle and diet have more of an effect, a positive effect, than these things I'm talking about for so long. And it's like, so why don't you talk about the things that you just said have a really good influence?
Right. So I think y'all should know that's kind of her angle with this. And while she does talk about some lifestyle behaviors, it's not an in-depth explanation or whatnot of that. So for me, right, as a registered dietitian, she goes into diet a little bit and supplements. And while I agree with most of her things, if you're wanting that kind of prevention and dietary behavior recommendations, then I'm going to plug a book by fellow dietitians called The Menopause Diet Plan. Let me pull up the author's name real quick so I can state that.
While you're looking that one up, I sent you a reference to the Galveston Diet by Mary Claire something or other, who's an MD. And she's got, I was thinking that might be an interesting one for you to look at as well. And tell me what you think about it before I read it.
Well, for dietary advice around menopause, I recommend the Menopause Diet Plan, A Natural Guide to Managing Hormones, Health, and Happiness by Hillary Wright, who's an RD, and Elizabeth Ward, an RD. So I think that would be a better explanation on those things.
Well, it would flesh it out, right? Yeah.
Flesh it out a little more, yeah. So her recommendations in general, exercise. It comes up a lot in here by Jen, which I appreciate, right? Because we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast and read books about how important movement is. And she brings it up in different areas, whether that's about helping with sleep, helping with bone health, helping with mood and mental health issues. So I appreciated that exercise was one of her major recommendations. She recommends a heart-healthy diet. And
she has a chart in the back comparing the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, and the MIND diet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't look at that, but those are generally the diet approaches that I think are best for a lot of people, including women in menopause. So I liked that recommendation. She recommends an omega-3 supplement. And I kind of take the diet first approach there because I think there's some, if you're not eating fish, which is high in omega-3s, there are some plant-based approaches you can use to increase your omega-3s, or you can supplement. But I appreciate that is on her radar because I do think omega-3 is really important.
Yeah, the only two supplements she was really hot about were omega-3s and B12. And I thought, I took a lot of issue in that she has a chapter on supplements, and I would take issue with several of the points she made. Not that they were all bad, but on the omega thing, I thought she should have talked about the omega-6-3 ratio.
Yes,
and she did not, and I think that was a glaring error. Not error, but omission, because she said, "Yeah, go on and get your omega-6s." Well, you got to be careful how much of that canola oil you're putting on everything.
Well, and it's not that. I think the bigger issue is that we're getting our omega-6s from processed foods mostly.
Yeah. So we can talk some more about
everything that's processed, which I think some processed foods have a place in our diet, but I agree 100% that she should have
Put that ratio discussion
Put that
in
ratio in there instead of just
And that's-
have all the omega-6s you want.
Yeah, and then some omega-3s. But so few people I know have incorporated sardines and fatty fish in their diet 2 or 3 times a week. According to the Mediterranean diet, I think it's more than once. And I don't do it once a week. So I think when people know what they should do but aren't doing it, that's when supplementation can be very, very helpful. And that's what I kind of say I'm here for if you find yourself as one of those folks.
Yeah.
And then she had a comment I wanted to ask you about. She had just this flippant thing about nutri-charlatans with wild claims about cures and fad superfoods and the supposed dangers of grain brain. And grain brain, I read the book, and the takeaway I got out of that was the grains that we're eating now, particularly in the processed foods, have been hybridized, genetically modified, whatever you want to say, to include 40 times the amount of gluten that our grains used to have. So while you're getting the micronutrients out of your grains that you need, and I think you know more about this than I, but the Bs are good. And so if people aren't eating their carbs, they may not be getting their B vitamins.
Yeah, well, and
level.
B12 isn't really in plants.
No, that's in meat. Yeah, but so he was saying, what we're seeing with this excessive gluten intake, the breakdown into the metabolites of that gluten are interestingly involved in the amyloid and the Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative processes. So that was what I took from his book, and might need to read that on the show sometime, that it's not the dangers of grain brain just because you're eating bread. It's what breads are you eating, what grains, how much are you getting, and are they processed, and
whole context of the diet that goes with it.
Yeah, the quality of the grain that you're getting.
Okay.
And, that's part of the Mediterranean diet, right? The grains that you eat in there are not necessarily white flour.
No, they're whole grains or homemade bread, for instance. Yeah.
So I had that chapter on the Menno diets that she caused. I had booms, But I did learn something in there about caffeine.
Okay.
Did you know about cafestrol? Which I have not looked up, so I probably should. But she was saying filtered versus non-filtered coffee. And filtered coffee is better. And our non-filters are the French press, which I love. The percolated coffee I don't do anymore. That's what I grew up with, the percolator on the stove. And then the espressos don't use filters. But she's saying this compound in the coffee is a cafestrol, and it raises your LDL cholesterol, which is not the one you want to have high.
Yeah, I learned that too.
Yeah, so I was going to verify that, but I think she's probably right about it.
So strange. I had a doctor's appointment yesterday, so I had my LDL. I'm drinking more coffee now than I ever have, and that stuff's gone down. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what they say. 5 cups a day are okay, and it increases mortality, gallbladder disease, Parkinson's, depression, headaches. And I've had a migraine or two. That ergotamine, which is something that they'll give you pharmaceutically, just drink a whole bunch of coffee or caffeine, something with caffeine in it, and you can. Some of us get a response from that. Some of us may need to go to the pharmaceutical, but not all of us.
Mine is half calf. Because I can't have all that caffeine, and mine is the espresso kind, so it's not the.
We might think about the filter. I mean, I
go to a certain coffee shop, and that's the way they do it.
I love my coffee. And the alcohol, she was okay with the alcohol too.
I'm okay with her then.
Because our blue zones, supported that. It's like it's not taboo necessarily. If you like it, enjoy it. And she gave us some recommendations for how much beer, how much wine, and how much spirits you can have and be okay. But did you see the thing about alcohol is the damage to the liver, and your liver makes these globulins which carry stuff around in your bloodstream. So she has this big mnemonic that she repeats over and over about sex hormone binding globulin, which is not that hard to remember. But she's saying, you remember seats handy on the bus, girls? And I'm going, how in the heck does that relate to sex hormone binding?
Globulin. I think it's okay
it threw
if you
me
say
off. Yeah.
Well, not necessarily. My mother taught me not to be vulgar.
That's not vulgar. It's in the Bible.
It is, isn't it? But not in the same context. All right. So, that's okay. Anything else? You said omegas, and I got carried away.
Oh, that's fine. So I got carried away in the bone health area, so we could bring that up.
Okay, well, before we leave this one, because we probably need to wrap this one up too, she says, be wary of these people that say they can fix it all for a price.
Yeah. I mean, that goes into our previous book that we talked about, right? Are they just marketing a solution that's too good to be true?
Exactly. But I'm saying, don't doctors charge a lot of money for their solutions?
Yeah.
And are they all effective? No. Do they have side effects? Yes. Do they give them to the wrong people sometimes? Yes. And so I just think that's an unfair criticism. Yes, there are bad players on both sides of this argument, but everybody needs to make money. So if you are able to help people, I think that's okay to earn an income.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really great way to say it, that, they're getting paid for what they do as well.
Yeah, a lot of money. And I mean, through the insurance company, I mean, that's also getting paid as well. So, okay, I can tone it down. And maybe we should wrap it up. What do you do, Kristen? How do you help people?
Wait, I'm not done.
Oh, good. Keep going.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. But we have another episode, don't we?
I want to talk about bone health.
Okay.
So an interesting thing in her bone health section was, I don't even know if this was in there. No, it was about breast cancer, but it ties into. Okay, so milk and breast cancer. So she brings up that a study that followed over 52,000 women for 8 years linked 3 glasses of milk a day with an 80% increased risk of breast cancer. Yeah. Even 1 glass a day was associated with a 50% increase. So here's what I really appreciate about her in this book. I'm going to keep reading just because I really want y'all to hear this. This is a scary sounding statistic, but it doesn't mean 80% of women who drink 3 glasses of milk a day will get breast cancer. For example, at the age of 50, if a woman has approximately a 1 in 42 or 2.4% risk of breast cancer in the next 10 years, with an 80% increased risk means her risk is now 4.3%. That's still a big jump and needs further attention, but it's critical to have the right perspective. This association with breast cancer wasn't seen with cheese or yogurt in the study. So I really appreciated that full perspective that she gave us there, instead of just kind of throwing out a scary statistic and letting you go to town in your head with that, what that meant. So interesting. And then she says that she loves drinking cow's milk, and she has tried to stick to just 1 cup a day. And she goes on to kind of explain the theories behind why there's this association between milk and breast cancer. And, I had to catch an error that she made. Oh. She talks about lactose.
I was getting ready to ask you about that.
And she calls lactose a protein. Lactose is a sugar.
It sure is.
Milk.
Ose means sugar.
Yeah. So I'm like, really?
Yeah.
But so she goes on that it could be the lactose, it could be the IGF-1, it could be, and there's one other thing, but they're all theories. We really don't know. But the lactose doesn't make a lot of sense because.
Well, I would say if what I understand, I may be off base here, but as I understand it, as we age, many of us lose the enzymes to break down the lactose. That in our earlier years, when when it's critical that we get calcium, and milk is a very good way to get it, and children build their bones pre-adolescence, actually, and you want to get as much bone mass built as you can and keep it, and that osteoporosis is the weakening of that strong calcium matrix in there, because the calcium comes in and out of your bones all the time. The bones are a repository, because you have to have calcium for muscle contractions, and your heartbeat is a muscle, right? And your skeletal muscle is a muscle. You've got to have it in there for those, all the stuff that happens. So if you are then having too much of the lactose that's not broken down, maybe there's something going on there.
Maybe,
if dietary sources. And, with the yogurt and the cheeses, bacteria are breaking it down.
And there's not as much lactose that you get from it.
Yeah, so you're still getting a good source, although you're getting the fats more concentrated in those one of those products than the cheeses.
So you bring up calcium and bone health, so I wanted to go into that. She does say that, other dietary sources of calcium like cheese, yogurt, And then, of course, it's in fortified soy milk. It's in tofu. It's in your cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts.
Lots of sources.
Beans and nuts even. Yeah.
Right. And that's what I'm dependent on because I don't like milk.
But she isn't opposed to a calcium supplement if you're not able to get that from your diet. And that ties me to another book because she says calcium plus vitamin D. We know that those are important, right? But we read a book, Slaying the Supplement Myths, by Dr. Steve Cheney, and he has an interesting recommendation that goes beyond that, that no, you really need to have other things with your calcium. So he said, this author says, bone contains significant amounts of magnesium along with trace minerals, zinc, copper, and manganese. And these are often present in inadequate levels in the diet. So most of us know that vitamin D is essential. And recent research has shown that vitamin K is also essential. So Dr. Cheney says an ideal calcium supplement should contain all those nutrients.
And I can help you with that.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. So I don't know. I was like, oh, okay, connection to another book. And that reminds me of his calcium supplement. So if you're not going to get it from your diet, a supplement is important, and the right kind of supplement matters.
Yeah, and she says that. She says she doesn't like supplements except for these couple that she identifies. But then she says, but if you're deficient, and I'm going, yeah, most people are deficient because of their dietary patterns, and they don't know it. So, they go on for many years without eating a healthy smorgasbord of macronutrients.
Yeah. And I took offense when she totally poo-pooed a multivitamin.
Yeah.
Because, right, diet first, absolutely.
Absolutely, we all agree.
But can you have a perfect diet? No.
And I'm a smart girl. I know how to do it. And I'm really pretty good, but there are days when I'm not.
And so, I was just really disappointed when she did that because, again, in Dr. Steve Cheney's book, he referenced a study done by Gladys Block, published in the Nutrition Journal in 2007. And he compared people who were taking multiple supplements versus those taking a multivitamin and against people taking nothing at all. And they were able to say that those who supplemented were associated with more favorable blood work. So
markers, you can measure,
those are important, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't just say everybody needs to be on a multivitamin, and I don't think all multivitamins are created equal.
Absolutely. And
but she just gave it a hard no, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How dare you?
To quote Eleanor, what in the hell?
Watch it.
Watch it.
I never said that. It just escaped.
Okay, so that's my piece. Those are the things that I had
to
get off
back to the bone
chest.
health, the pharmaceutical, the bisphonates, however you say that one.
Oh, for bone health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the supplement that they give people. I just... And I wish, maybe in another one I'll look that up. In another episode I can talk to that. But I just not happy with that one. And people get on it and create secondary things.
Yeah. So,
okay, I need to look that up. I'm getting foggy. I need a break.
All right. Well, who are you, Eleanor?
Oh, well, I'm Eleanor. At 360health, number 4 letter U.com, I help people make choices about supplementation and lifestyle adjustments so that we can all age vibrantly and enjoy those later years, but also be alive while you're alive. So what do you do, Kristen?
I am a registered dietitian with Well Balanced Nutrition. And we offer nutrition coaching for lifestyle changes, especially around things like prediabetes, IBS, going plant-based, getting your heart health under control. And if you think that you would like nutrition coaching, which can be covered by your insurance company, check out our website, wellbalancednutrition.com, and you can apply for a free clarity call.
Happy reading, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget a review.
Views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.